right, welcome everybody and good evening. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to our Master Coding with AI masterclass or tutorial. So really excited to have you here. With me is my friend Vlad here in the call. So Vlad and I, we met at a meetup or conference where where he gave a session enabling people on vibe coding. So I'm very proud to have Vlad here and we are going to deliver this together today. We have 60 minutes and really the outcome is that you know exactly where to start, you know what the tricks are, you know what the hacks are, and we are going to be using professional coding skills on a professional tool set. You also realize we started a few minutes later, so thank you for your patience. You realize that the meetup platform was down, but this could not stop you from learning today, which is great, so I'm glad we are all in the meeting today. To start with, let me say this, and you may have realized this since you are here today. AI is coming, AI is here to stay, and AI is coming fast. And when I see how some companies are accelerating or some individuals are accelerating using the tools, and those who are not using them, they are really at the risk of staying behind. So this is why I think for Vlad and me and for a lot of people, it's part of our mission to really enable people using those tools to make AI really our best companion, our best assistant. So I think we all want to be here on the left side. So I'm asking you, on which side do you want to be? If you are already technical, this is just, you can do so much with it. I'm doing so much with it. I've been working in the tech field for a long time, but I'm not a software engineer. So if you have the skills, this is just awesome. What we're going to cover today is this: how to start your vibe coding context engineering project, how to get started, and how to make sure you're not ending up in a mess. How to start simple, but really also with a foundation with which you can scale. How to build and deploy agents. Not only, so you don't want to only build an application, but maybe you also want to build agents. Best practices, for example, if you want to migrate from one platform to another. If you say, I have this cool web app, but now I want to build an iOS or Android app. I would say consistency and mindset. We will cover this briefly. Context and steering principles. And I say here 10x the impact of your work, because if you have a strong context defined, you can just give a prompt and it builds something functional. If you don't have a strong context, it's going to build whatever, and then you're going to end up cleaning up the mess. Really in the truest sense. Additional vibe coding hacks by Vlad. Actually, Vlad is going to go pretty deep and also will introduce a live project. And we'll also show you how you can do observability for your apps. So yeah, how many of you are excited to get started now? And I see the introductions are still coming in, and I see the me in the chat. So let's get it on. Let's get it on. So briefly about Vlad and myself. So since we're going to spend some time together, so I'm a certified trainer, NLP coach. So I do a lot of mindset things as well, and I really enjoy that. But I've also been in tech for a long time. I'm a team lead in sales, but I'm also a passionate builder. I'm an author, and here in Munich, I do a lot with communities. And I would say over to Vlad for a very brief intro.
Hi, everybody. From my side, my name is Vlad. I'm a senior solution architect at a consulting company. Spent the last 10 years building different enterprise projects in the banking and energy domains. And my last focus is AI since a couple of years, and specifically how to generate code with AI. I'm also, that's why it's since weekend warrior, I'm created a couple of projects in my spare time, and I'm heavily relying on AI on that. And on top, 2 years ago, I've completed an executive MBA.
Yeah, thank you, Vlad. And I also really look forward to learning from you today as well. So going into it, and so we had, I would say, 5 minutes now of introduction. We will have another 3 minutes until we go into the code. So bear with me, but this is important to set some context. So just to motivate you even more, even though I think you are all motivated because you are here despite the circumstances. So AI is here to stay. I think we would all agree on this. It's not a temporary thing. And the pace of advancement is exponential. And if I'm very honest with you, sometimes it's also going fast for me. So I listen to my favorite podcasts, my favorite newsletters, and it's really, really going fast. But then the nice thing is also you can implement the new releases, the new technologies, you can implement them very fast. Who's going to help you implement them? AI is going to help you. So you hear about a new concept and AI is going to help you implement it in your product. And what is really a beautiful thing, I think AI is democratizing a lot of things. So maybe somebody had great ideas, but was not able to implement that. Now it is possible. So think about yourself. What kind of skills or what kind of capabilities, what possibilities are open for you now with AI? You can finally implement this idea that would have before maybe taken a team of 5 people, but you can now implement it. Whether you implement it for yourself, whether you implement it in a company. When you work in a company, you can now implement new features quickly, validate them with customers, get feedback. Yeah, so there are a lot of possibilities here. And why did I ask you to interact in the chat? And why do I ask you to turn your cameras on as well? And by the way, now we have 60 people here in the meeting, which is amazing. And that's for a big reason. First of all, I want to ask you, what is required for learning? So if you really want to maximize your learning experience, what you take out of those 60 minutes we have, what is a requirement? You can post into the chat. So what is important for learning? And we want to move on soon. So I give you the ingredient. We have a few here: doing, taking out time, having a purpose to learn, being consistent in learning. So there are lots of answers, but what we also look for is energy. We need energy to learn. So this is why I ask you, keep your cameras on. We are asking you a lot of questions. Really be present in front of the computer. What you're going to learn here in the next 45 minutes, it can really big for you. It can be, I want to say, I don't want to say life-changing, but maybe it is. If you really improve the way you are coding, what you can build, it can be really life-changing. So please focus. I did a masterclass a few weeks ago. I delivered this 2 times. I give this to you very briefly. But when we think about what is important now in the time of AI, there are some capabilities and some mindsets that are important, and we just briefly go over them. The first one is reasoning models as a co-CEO, as a coach, as an advisor. So if you have important decisions, iterate on it with AI. Those who are not doing it yet, this is just as important as using it for coding. Share your biggest problems, iterate. To me personally, it really helps. Mastering vibe coding tools, and this is exactly why we are here today: vibe coding, spec engineering. And then leading and orchestrating agents, collaborating with agents. So it's quite significant to understand how do agents work, because then you can define tasks for them. The better you understand them, the better you can work with them. You can steer a group of agents. And then you can build your agentic system and mobile application at the same time, because you are maybe using multiple Claude windows or multiple and plus a Kiro window at the same time, or a cursor. So you can orchestrate several agents at the same time, but you want to understand how do they work. And what is important in terms of mindset? It's growth mindset. So even though this is new, you have the ability to learn this. It's in your power to learn this. Your skills are not limited. Then a relationship focus. So the more AI comes into our daily work and daily life, the more important will relationships become. So really doubling down also on the relationships that we have. The entrepreneurial mindset. And many of you, and we did the survey before and also shared that on LinkedIn, many of you want to build something. And that's the entrepreneurial spirit, the creation, not just consuming, the creation. So I'm really excited actually to, maybe some of you want to share it afterwards with Vlad and me, what you're going to build or what you're already building. So we are really excited to hear about that, because an entrepreneurial mindset, it's going to be more and more the standard. The employee mindset or the employee position, it used to be a safe job for decades, but maybe it's not going to be like that anymore. So we have to look at the entrepreneurial side of things. Self-agency, so just as agents are able to take their own decisions, are able to move, we as humans have to be more and more, have to increase our self-agency, right? Because from consumer to creator, from employee to entrepreneur, or entrepreneur, because in this way we will stay most valuable for our employer. And the next one here is abundance. So I think that's a very crucial idea, because sometimes also I'm thinking, okay, now there are basically anyone could build an app. So how do I differentiate? So yes, go to market is important. Understanding the customer well is important, but also this sense of there are more problems to solve than great people to work on it. So there is an abundance of opportunities out there, and that's not going to stop so soon. That's not going to stop anytime soon. So approach this with the mindset you're going to find great things to work on. A self-directed learning mindset. So don't wait until somebody's telling you to take a course. Do exactly what you did today. So join classes like this. A longevity mindset with technology. People can live longer. We can cure diseases. So how do we want to spend that additional time we have on Earth? So I want to encourage everybody to think about that as well. Metacognitive mindset, the thinking about thinking. So thinking about how does an AI agent think? More and more important. It also relates to the increasing focus on humans that comes after all. A value-aligned and ethical mindset, because it's now everybody's responsibility now, as we are building with AI, to democratize to an extent the value that we create. So this is an overview, because I want to make sure you take more out of it than just the coding. Anyway, now comes the moment we've all been waiting for. 13 minutes today in the meeting. So how many of you are excited to now get into the coding? Let's do it. Let's do it. Yes. So the process. And I'm going to show you today actually Kiro, which is a great product, which will kind of guide you through the process. But I want to make sure that you understand the process end to end. So this is why we have this overview here for you. So let's look at the elements first. So what about vibe coding? Vibe means being in a good state, being open, creative, focused, because only then you can create great things. Context, giving all the context your AI agents need. And spec, building something closely aligned to specs. We will see in a moment what this looks like in code. So how could this workflow look like? Let's say you want to build something. You start with an idea, you start with a business challenge. And the first thing that I oftentimes do is I open Claude and I say, okay, Claude, we are going to build something. This is my idea. Can you please interview me? Because we want to clarify the requirements. Can you please interview me? And then you share your intent. You also share your desired tech stack, and we will look more into detail in this. But it's important that you share what kind of technologies should be used. If you are not sure, you can ask, okay, what kind of technologies could I use? Please give me a comparison. Please give me an overview. And when you do that, please challenge it, because AI oftentimes tend to say yes to everything. You must also remind AI that it's 2025 October. Please check the website for the latest releases. Otherwise, it's gonna build software in a version that is outdated for 1 year. So when you have these requirements clarified, you can ask it to build a documentation. So this is the classical way, I would say. We will then see in Kiro how you can do this directly. Then the next one is, okay, build a design mockup based on your vision. So the touch and the feel is important, obviously, so it can build a design mockup for you. And what you also want to have are AI steering rules. So what happened to me one time, that was in the early days, the agent deleted my complete GitHub repository. It just deleted the repository. So that's what can happen if you don't have proper steering rules in place. So be cautious about it. A database reference. Before I had a proper database reference in place, it would just build anything and give the database tables and variables any random names. You don't want that. So give it a database reference. Ideally, it should even be connected to the database. So it can access the database, it can write into the database, create new tables, new columns. But obviously for that, you want to have a strong steering. It can spin up services in the cloud. It can create policies. You want to have a very strong steering in place. And of course, in this case, if you do this individually, also human in the loop. So check what it is actually building and think of some guardrails. After your first build, deploy to GitHub. Because what may happen if you run into some issues, you can always revert to an earlier version of in GitHub. It's very, very helpful. Of course, if you want to then bring it to live, you want to have environment variables that you save in a .env.local file, and then also wherever you host it. You want to host the back and the front end. I would oftentimes recommend to instruct, make the features and tools functional. Well, first start with a mockup kind of, and then make the features and tools functional. So it's a more iterative approach. And then after the time, you can continue with security, permissions, if you have an application with payments and so on. So that's the process in an overview. And if you have questions, and this is why I'm highlighting it here, ask AI, iterate with AI. Hey, what would be ways to implement this? And I recently came across this challenge or idea. All right, how am I able to control the whole application via AI agents? And I came up with a solution. In this particular case, it works really well with an agent running in Amazon Bedrock Agent Core. And then via Agent Core Gateway, it would have access to tools, which are basically Lambda functions that are triggered. And each Lambda function is connected with an API route in the application. And this is how I can control the application with an AI agent. But you can talk with AI about it, or you can just talk with an expert. But the key difference now is you get an idea from the expert, and you can take it and bring it to life. So with all of this, now let's build. So let's get into the building. I think you're all excited about this. So we will do a little demo. And so it will be a mix of slide and demos. And please let me know if there are any challenges seeing the screen well. So what I prepared for you is a session initialization prompt. Because when you start with Kiro, and now you should be able to see Kiro here. When you start with Kiro, all of this here on the left, the agent steering will be empty. The MCP servers will be empty. And obviously your specs will be empty. But why is this so useful? Well, the agent steering tells your agent what to do. So it has an AI development guide, a brand design system, a database guidance, some engineering principles. Well, this one is specific, and this one was created afterwards, and a technology stack. And the first thing, so I'm going to share this document with you. So this is Kiro. This is one of the great vibe coding tools, and it's special in some ways because you can vibe code with the latest models, but you can also do so-called spec engineering. So you have here, initially, this is all blank. So you have agent steering, what we created, and you create this through this initialization prompt, an AI development guide. So don't just randomly delete things in GitHub. That is something you can write in there. Or you can say, it is October 2025. Please check for the latest technology. We have database guidelines, which say what the actual database looks like. We have engineering principles. It also gives you the scale of the application, which you can, of course, change, but it's not going to build things that are relevant for an application which has 1 million users. And the technology stack. We have here MCP servers that we can connect, and we have the whole specification for the project. But let me first go back. So the way you create these steerings and so on here on the side is you actually click on New Session, and you have here the vibe mode and the spec mode, and you would just paste the document here that I'm sharing with you. So I'm going to share the link with you later. So then it will create this structure. It will know, okay, I need some steerings for myself. So after that, it will say, okay, Kiro project initialization complete. And the folder structure will already look like this. So those of you who are active in coding, this will look very familiar to you. Okay, this is a repository structure. Here we have some environment variables saved and so on. So this is a cloud project. So we will have infrastructure, Terraform also managed here. It's all in a mono repository. So let's move on. Now it's set up. But what's the next step? So I came up with, I asked myself, okay, what kind of application do we want to build? What do I want to demonstrate you? And I came up with a very simple idea. Let's have an application that is able to generate an image of a cat or a dog. And this will be just natively calling an AI. And then the user can click a button and the AI evaluates whether it's a cat or a dog. And for that, an AI agent will be used. Now, do you have to use an AI agent for that? You don't have to, but it's just nice for that use case. And what happens is, first of all, you fill out the requirements in Kiro, and you see that here. If you go on Kiro specs, you have here the requirements. And basically, initially, you just vibe it into. So you just say, what do you want Kiro to build? And you see the text appearing here. So I always use voice control. And then Kiro is going to create this requirement document for you. And then you can say, yes, but I want this feature. I want that user journey. I want that function. And then you move to design. And then it makes you a suggestion initially. Okay, do you want to build it with this tech stack? Ideally, you already specify this. But here in the design phase, you can really make that sharp. So yeah, I personally said I want to use, okay, somewhere here I have the technology. So agent core for the Amazon Bedrock agent core for the agents. I want to have it hosted on Amplify. I want to use Aurora database to save some basic user information. All of that you can specify here. And then it will come up with a task list. So it will build this step by step. And by the way, Kiro can build this, but also, for example, Claude could build this as well. And I will show you that in a moment. So this is basically the step. And if you remember those 3 phases or 9 steps that I mentioned earlier, this is basically it. But of course, it's going to build a lot of steering documents. And whether you work in Kiro or not, you want to have such steering documents in place. So we have them right here, steering. These are the documents that you also see here. And you can just say, please generate those steering documents for me. Well, obviously, we initially created the steering documents. So let's actually go back to the main storyline here. So we have requirements, design, and we have a plan. So now AI has a plan to build this. So let's move on. What if I like the plan, but I want to make an adjustment? So for example, here I said at the end, yes, but when the user clicks on please identify whether it's a cat or a dog, the user should put in their name, and this should be saved in a database. Okay, so it added those requirements. I was also saying, and this I did afterwards, okay, don't just start with building everything in the cloud. Start with a local implementation. Start building a local implementation first. So then it adjusts the plan, adjusting the plan before it starts building. So let's move on. And at this point, you can actually just say, okay, go build, start building. But I want to give you some more context now. So there are different ways, and I will show you a technology overview in a moment. But this one, obviously, I built it in the cloud. And the reason is, so I've started with some very simple tools, which you can really get started in 2 minutes. I've started earlier. But then I realized I want those full requirements. So I migrated to the cloud. So I migrated with coding assistance. I migrated to AWS, which is possible, which is good, but which was a project of work, which was a lot of work. So depending on what you want to do, I ask you, consider to start building on a very scalable platform such as AWS. I can really recommend that. What you need is you can create a free account. So you need a root user account. Then you create a CLI user and a console user. So CLI user, your agent will be able to use it. And the console user, of course, you can log in the console. And then you can give this information to the AI assistant, and then it will be able to build with it. By the way, and once you have created this requirements, design, and steering, you will ask AI, now please update the steering that we created. Please update the steering and the folder structure that was created. Because then the context is perfect and really aligned to your project. So this is about basically creating all of this in AWS. So this is obviously anonymized. You just need 3 things. One is the access key, then the secret access key, and you have to say in which region. If you want it to be hosted in EMEA, in Germany, you choose EU Central 1. So next, of course, you want to create your GitHub repository. And I think 90% of you are very familiar with GitHub. Those who are not, just very easily create the GitHub repository and then ask your agent. And I can actually say now, okay, can you please, I go in vibe mode. We did some changes in the project. Can you please push to GitHub? And now let me just double check something. Okay, we did some changes here. Okay, push to GitHub. So while it's pushing to GitHub, we're going to continue. All right, so it's building now. And we're going to go back to the building in a moment, but I first want to show you some principles. Actually, let's go a little bit to the building. Let's go a little bit to the building. So now here it's pushing to GitHub, which is taking some time. What I did in this case, I told actually Claude Code to build this. So I opened a new Claude Code session, and this is in the terminal. And I personally love using Claude Code as well. So I said, all right, you are going to build a new project. Here is where the project is stored. So it's obviously stored in a local folder, Kiro, Specs, pet AI image. Here you find the specification to build this, including the different phases. Is this clear to you? And in this file, so in the initialization prompt that you have, it also creates a claude.mv file. You will find some steering instructions as well. When you build, please work with task agents in parallel to accelerate your building. So this is very helpful. And this instruction you can also give in Kiro, I believe, letting different agents build in parallel. So this building, it now built the first MVP version of the product. And then it gives me the result, basically what it built. You don't see a lot of code here because all the things are running in the background because it's orchestrating this fleet of agents and you don't even see what they are doing. They are just building it in the background. So yeah, here we go. This is what was built. And this is the phase 1 of the project, which is now finalized. Now it's saying, okay, phase number 2 is AWS integration, which will involve installing the dependencies, implementing real Amazon Nova Canva image generation, creating strange agents framework. So the nice thing is it can build all of this because it has access to the MCP servers of the AWS console as well. Let me ask this actually. Can you please confirm that you have access to the AWS documentation via MCP? So let's do this. Let's ask the same question to Kiro. Okay, it's successfully pushed, by the way. Can you please confirm that you have access to the AWS documentation via MCP? So while we are waiting here for the confirmation, so yes, it has access to 3 MCP servers. And this is extremely helpful. Now, as it's spinning up AWS infrastructure, it's good that it has this context. So let me say this. So I'm activating the planning mode here. So since you're going to spin up AWS infrastructure, I want you to check with the MCP servers just to make sure you're building the right thing. So it's going to do that. It's going to do some planning now. What I actually want to ask Kiro is, do we already have a web interface of the application that we could start on localhost? So now we are doing some coding here, but let me go back to the principles because these are actually super important. And I will keep it brief because Vlad, I will still hand over to you. But let me cover these principles. So first of all, consider there are multiple programming languages. So in some cases, you may have different programming languages in your repo. For example, when you use like an application built with Node.js, Java, and agents are built with OpenAI or a Strengths Agents framework. So in this case, you have different programming languages, but this is okay. I'm using, for some of my projects, a mono repository approach, which is totally fine. You just want to manage it well. If you use Agent Core, there must be a proxy, typically a Lambda, connecting your application with the agents. Now let's look at some principles. So what are tool choices? So of course, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I actually love building with it, building with AWS. A very simple way to get started with a database and authentication is also Supabase, which you can consider. Hosting of the app, Amplify from AWS is a great thing. You can also consider Vercel. Hosting of agents, you can use Bedrock Agent Core. I've also tried Railway in the past. You can also use other cloud providers. Coding assistance, you can use Kiro, Claude Code, Cursor. So choice of technology, start with your simple solution that might make sense for you, but later then you have risks of migration and time and resources. So use the platform that matches your needs. So if it's a local coffee shop, if it's something very small, you may want to go with a simple solution. If you want to build some cool, more sophisticated AI agentic features, or if this should scale, choose a bigger platform. Yes, instruct your coding assistant explicitly what date and what year it is, so it uses some latest standards. Include that in your steering file as well to avoid technical debt, because later you may have to upgrade the whole code stack to a newer version. So what else? Have the steering documents. I already mentioned that. You can also consider agent hooks. So agent hooks is something you saw in Kiro. For example, every time I launch a new page of the website or a new blog article, automatically create the translation as well. Or every time before I deploy to GitHub, make a TypeScript check. And then connect with documentation MCPs. I already mentioned that this is super important. Use voice, and I cannot highlight that enough. This is, for me, really a game changer. If you start interacting with a voice. Personally, I'm using VoiceFlow. You can also use this voucher. It will give you 1 month for free. I do not collaborate with them, but actually I met them last week in San Francisco. It's a small company. It's such a simple use case, but it makes a big impact. So communicating with voice. Use Spec or planning mode for complex tasks. So what I was demonstrating you was creating a new application. But if you want to migrate from one platform to another one, or if you want to modernize something, it also makes a lot of sense to use the Spec mode. I was showing this to you in Claude Code. So here it created a plan, actually, to build now all the AWS stuff. It created a plan. And similarly, here I can open the spec mode. Actually, we do have the spec mode here for the project, and it will, yeah, this is a spec mode, so that you know, the planning mode. You can iterate with multiple AI assistants, especially for complex things. If there are different platform decisions you can take. Sometimes I iterate with Kiro, then with Claude Code, and also with Claude natively. Iterate and start smart. Don't build this technical depth. Give a lot of context using voice, a lot of context. So this is sometimes how I design a prompt. So I give a lot of context, and this was actually the redesign of some pages. But with all of this context, it was able to exactly implement my plan. Of course, this is just the prompt. There is a lot of context in the background. Be playful with your AI. So sometimes it's really humorous, like here, local horse successfully rebuilt. And let your coding assistants interview you. So you can do this very conversational. Now in Claude Code, there's also in the terminal, there's also this interview mode. This is very helpful. And yeah, if you have complex things, create a planning document. So it happens sometimes the AI runs into a context window, is unable to recover. You want to have a planning document, for example, in the spec mode, that it can always fall back to, that is always giving the structure. All right, and ultimately, a best practice, how you can build a mobile application, starting from your web application. You can basically instruct the AI agent to rebuild the same application, but building it with standards for a mobile application. You could, for example, use React Native to do that. Then it will read in one repository and write into the other repository. And thereby, relatively quick, you can build a mobile application, taking the standards from your web application. And this is something that simply wouldn't have been possible before. And then sometimes you see the coding assistant helping you coding independently for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Does it always do the right thing at the first shot? Not necessarily. But the more you iterate, the stronger the context gets, the better the result gets. So how many of you learned something already? How many of you learned something already from the session? Please write something to the chat. Nice. So thank you for that. Me. Awesome. So thank you for that. I will show you something for 2 minutes before we start with Vlad's session. I will show you something for 2 minutes now, and please pay attention. So this question you can answer for yourself. So what did you learn so far? And with this knowledge alone, what result would you like to reach in the next 90 days with this? What kind of result would you like to achieve? So take a moment just for yourself and think, what result do you want to achieve? Do you want to innovate the product of the company you are working on? Do you just want to learn a hobby project? Do you want to build a project that you want to bring to the market? So think about it. And now the question is, of course, what are you waiting for? So I hope all of you tonight, tomorrow, you block some time to start building your things or to advance those capabilities. So I hope you're taking some time for that. And one hack that I want to show you is, so I'm not going to go through all of this in detail, but the question is, how do you get consistency in building with AI? How do you get consistency in anything? How do you align your actions with what is important for you? How do you get the emotional resilience that is necessary to follow through even on a hard day? How do you understand what you actually want? And how do you give yourself permission and align the whole system to really stay on track? So I focused on this question myself for a long time. I coached people in one-on-one, then I coached groups. And now we launched Lumina OS. But with this, I want to now hand over to Vlad for the live coding. Vlad, over to you.
Thank you. So just so that we don't waste a lot of time, I'm going to go ahead and start Cloud Code to do the task that we have planned. And then I'm going to go ahead and explain what actually we're doing and so on. So with Command Escape, I'm going to start Cloud Code. With Shift and Tab, I'm going to change to here underneath, you can see, I'm going to change to plan mode. And I'm going to say implement at demo prompt. So that's a prompt that I've already prepared. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that, and we'll wait. I'm going to explain a bit what's going on. So I have a Visual Studio Code here in an existing project that has, let me see, already a couple of applications inside of it. Or when we have a look, we have 40,000 lines of code in total. So it's not a huge project, but it's still quite interesting. We are currently generating, according to the prompt, to the demo prompt, which is here, we are generating resume or CV application that should help people to generate a CV, a PDF, essentially by going ahead and adding some information back and forth and so on. So we're going to see how far we're going to get. It's a live demo, so there. I'm hoping we manage to show something, but as there always risk with live demo, but I have a backup, so it should be fine. So basically, if you see, I have like just 7 lines. So I'm generating the application from 7 lines, and I'm not talking about use this technology or that technology or like whatever. I'm basically saying use 2 MCP servers, and I'm saying create a technically aligned app. So basically in this project, I already have a agentic steering in place that helps any agent with the create generation of any code in terms of like what technology should be used and how this technology should be used. So I have a bit of more stuff that I've also created with Cloud Code, so I can generate different applications. So here in apps, I have a bunch of applications, and I can generate deterministically with the script that I created with Cloud Code. I can generate an empty shell for a new application. That I already have done. And so we're still in planning mode. We didn't do any changes, but essentially deterministically I'm creating some meta information with the name of the application and so on, and an entry point for the application. So there's this like to do new app. So if you open the application right now, it's going to be just empty application to do. We can go ahead and do that. Yeah, that's to do new app. So we have an empty application. This is running currently locally. And as I mentioned, we're going to generate a CV application. So here we already see Claude created a bunch of stuff for plan. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it, yeah, sure. I mean, usually I'm going to read it and I'm going to figure out what it's trying to do, but like, or at least I'm going to skim it. But now just to save some time, yes, auto accept everything and just generate the application. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and show a bit of the agentic steering that I have in place. So we already talked, or Tilman already talked about MCP. So here I have only 3 MCP servers configured, so I cleaned up a bit, so it's not too crazy. I have an interesting one. There is like a Chrome DevTools MCP. So this is really exciting that now Cloud Code and actually other agents, they can start your application locally. And with Chrome, using the Chrome browser, they can go ahead and use the DevTools to actually see how the application looks, to actually see if there are some errors in the console, to actually get some feedback from the created and running locally application. So this is like a really game changer. Before that, we used to use stuff like Puppeteer, so like end-to-end test frameworks that also can start the browser and control the browser and so on. And they had also MCP server, but I think this one with the Chrome DevTools, it's also really powerful. So I can only recommend that to use it. Another one is this context 7. For the ones that don't know it, it's essentially, as Tilman already said, one of the pitfalls is because all the LLMs, they have this cutoff date. So they have the date when they were trained, and this is called the cutoff date. So basically the state of knowledge without using tools and MCPs is basically that date. And since then, since like those things cost like millions to train, and they're not being trained every week or something, and it takes time, etc. So usually they're like a couple of months or half a year or a year until a new version comes out. And in the meantime, it might be that technology changes, new versions of those building blocks that you're using, this documentation gets updated. And there, this context 7 helps. Like this one will provide, at least for the front-end application libraries, will provide you with the latest documentation. So the agent doesn't build outdated stuff that is already like deprecated, and then you have to figure out how to fix it. But it gets the up-to-date documentation and builds correctly, so to speak. Another one is the Pantheon MCP. That's actually an open source project of mine that I'm going to show what it does in a second. So those are the MCP servers. And as we heard, MCP servers, hooks, and now Cloud Code also released skills. Those are all things that we should use. Those are all things that helps us to reduce the solution space and kind of increase the deterministic behavior of the LLM. So the agent, when it has an MCP integration, when it has a hook integration with some specific behavior that we want to make mandatory, essentially, the agent can't just imagine stuff, but it must use the available information or the available tools within the MCP servers. And this helps a lot with actually making the whole process more deterministic and reducing things that the agent just thinks of themselves. So those hallucinations, how they call, and producing better results at the end of the day. So here I have in the project, when we collapse all this, I have Gemini MD and Cloud MD. So basically that's your minimum that you want to have. Cloud MD and Gemini, or if you're using Gemini MD, but this is like, and there's also this standard that came out recently with Agents MD. But essentially this is kind of like this in Kiro, part of the steering file. And here we have like a bunch of technical stuff about what should be used, like solid principles, clean code principles, and a bunch of other things. But obviously this shouldn't be also too huge, because we have a context window that if we put here thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of steering information, at some point we're going to have like issues with the context. And we want to use as smallest context as possible, because then we get also better results. At some point, when technically, yes, Gemini supports 1 million tokens as context and so on, but there are already papers and studies that show that when you have such huge context, a lot of things get skipped. And essentially all of those best practices, the LLMs, they know those best practices. I mean, an LLM is loosely compressed information, and they are aware of solid principle, clean code principle, best design practices, and so on. They are aware of those things. We just have to remind them and to have them in the context. And that's actually one of the tools. So if you want minimalistic CloudMD or Gemini ID or steering file, you can generate one. I already shared it in the chat. So essentially, so that's another platform that I've built. There are a lot of small tools. And if you go to AI, there is this instructions generator for coding, for agentic coding. And here we have like the common guidelines, security guidelines, design guidelines, documentation. I can choose which ones do I want to have in. And then I say, after brainstorming with the agent, I said, we decided that I'm going to build the application with React and TypeScript. So essentially, I'm choosing the technology to have a very specific steering, but only to the stack that's relevant to my project. And then I can go ahead and download it for Claude, for Cursor, and for Gemini. Also for GitHub Copilot and their instructions where to put the file. But as you can see, when I'm running multiple projects, when I'm running on multiple devices within teams and so on, at some point, I have to deal with all those markdown files, like those steering files, essentially. And this is also what's a question in the chat, and that's actually another open source project that I've created, this Pantheon MCP that I already mentioned that was configured before. So this thing essentially has 42 agents pre-configured, and when you integrate with the MCP, it's going to fetch based on the task. If I have in the task create a React application, it's going to fetch steering for React developer, senior React developer that's going to execute then the task. So basically, this is a dynamic fetching of steering documentation instructions, essentially, based on the task. And the nice thing about this is it all runs locally on your machine, so no data is transferred back and forth or whatever. So it's also compliant, and you don't need to worry about your data leaking or anything like that. The same, by the way, is valid for those tools. So those tiny tool stack, there are a bunch of tools that are really interesting also for AI. And actually for prototypes and experimenting, there is this vibe coding prompt. So essentially prompt generator. So essentially you write what's the overview of your application, what are the features, and you already get pre-built tech stack recommendation, UI guidelines recommendation, what's the role of the agent, general guidelines, and so on. And you can already open it directly in Claude, ChatGPT, or Grok, or copy it in Lovable. And for experimenting and prototyping, this is really the fastest way to try something out. And then you go with the agentic engineering and try to rebuild it. Another thing, for example, if you see the presentation, we also generated like our QR codes here. You can add your logo and so on. So there are a bunch of useful applications. And hopefully, in a bit, there is going to be also a CV generator. Let's see how far. Yeah, okay, so it's still working. It did quite a lot already. So we see there is a bunch of generated things already. Some things, because it's out of the scope of the current event, some things that I generated beforehand, but I didn't use, is, for example, so for the more technical people, this is like the Open API specification. So this is the interface specification for REST API, essentially. And for the more not that technical people, so this is essentially a document that tells or explains how exactly an interface is working when I have the front end and how the front end is going to communicate with the back end, right? And this, for example, is database scheme. So this tells me how the data will be stored, and it's very specific, very concrete. And then I have also a data model in the front end, how the data model for this application is going to look like. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to first brainstorm with the agent. I'm going to generate those three things, and those will become my cornerstones. Those are going to become specifications. So basically my front-end data model, how the data is going to be represented in the front-end application, the communication between front-end and back-end, how that's going to look like, and how the data is going to be stored in my back-end. And once I've brainstormed and reviewed and decided on how those will look like, those become freezed until I get, like, I don't know, a new feature down the road, and then it needs modification. But initially, then those are frozen, and those become part of the spec. And essentially what I'm trying to do, if we go back to the presentation, so this is the live demo. Essentially, we are kind of trying here we have on the left side, we want to open the diamond. We are brainstorming, experimenting. We have still the steering documentation, but we are essentially prototyping. And once we cross here the most expanded area, we are starting to take decisions. So basically, we have the MCP integrations, we have the hooks, we have the agent definitions, we have the architectural decisions that we've taken after the brainstorming sessions. We have the database schema, we have the data model, we have the Open API interface specification, how the different components will talk to each other. And then we are reducing the solution space. So essentially, we are locking the possible outcomes, and we're aiming for more deterministic output. Deterministic meaning I'm going to execute it 5 times, and I'm going to get some quite similar results in terms of output. And that's how I'm getting to the goal. So basically, I'm trying to reduce the solution space for the agent so that it doesn't hallucinate too much, so it doesn't start doing things that's not going to work. And this is part of it. So basically generating those files first, and then telling it to go ahead and build it. So actually, Claude is already done with implementing, and now it's the exciting moment. So I'm going to restart the project, and we're going to see if this thing works. So bear with me. So Let's go to CV generator. Oh, okay, so we have now pre-filled data on the left side. So we have the preview on the right side, how the CV is going to look like. And then there is a modern template, so to speak. Oh, this is actually quite cool. I can change the colors. And then if we download it, okay, this takes a bit of time. Let's see. But actually the download should work as well. But I'm actually quite satisfied. So I can add more education points. Yeah, here, TUM, for example. Master of Science. Yeah, and it's appearing here in the preview. Yeah, okay. Oh, there's also the documentation was generated. That's quite interesting. Nice. I can add also a picture. Let me try again with the download. Or let's see, do we have now? Ah, okay. What is it? There's some font missing. Is it from this? Yeah, okay. So basically, let's see. I'm gonna tell Claude that there's an issue. So I'm gonna first stage those changes to freeze them, more or less. And then I'm going to tell it that there's an issue. But essentially, I mean, this is already quite interesting. So I didn't tell it which library to use for the components, how to style all those things, how to arrange it, and so on. And this is already quite aligned with my my platform, with all the other tools that I have, because I have this steering in place. So I'm having just like a small prompt. I'm letting it plan the whole process. I'm giving it the tools, and then I'm reducing the scope as much as possible, the solution space as much as possible, so that I restrict what I'm getting generated. And usually what I will do now is I'm gonna test it, and I'm gonna make I'm gonna review the code. Maybe I'm gonna do some improvements because like I have the technical experience, and I kind of really want the quality to be at a certain level. But another thing, which when I'm doing a more complex project, what I'm doing actually first is I'm letting the agent do a test-driven development. So for the non-technical people is when we have the specification, and then we write the tests without having the code, and then we write the code. So there's actually an iterative process where I'm making the test screen, and then I'm building the next feature, and then test is breaking, and so it's a step-by-step thing. But with the agents, it doesn't work quite that well yet, but you can still write a bunch of feature tests with the agent and then build the application, especially when it's about more critical stuff. So let's see if Cloud Code did some changes, but it's still working on. Just to save time, I'm going to continue, and then we're going to see if like this last feature to download the PDF, we're going to get it running within this time. But I'm actually super satisfied already with the CV generator, because like we have different templates. I can add education and work and skill, general information. I can add an image. Yeah, there are the skills. Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. So let's see here in the presentation. So basically, how to get the consistency. Context engineering is super important. So I have to think of, there are different types of context engineering. The context engineering that is on my machine, that is global, that is always there. There's the steering, essentially. Then I have like part of the context is project specific. So what does this project do? And essentially that actually Tilman mentioned that before, we really have to tell the agent what's our end game. If they don't know what's our end game, they kind of might diverge from the direction that we want them to go. So essentially, when you onboard another team member, you're going to explain, here we are trying to build this company that the vision is, I don't know, X, Y, Z, whatever. But you communicate the vision. So with the agent, that's also quite interesting and important. And then the third layer is I have a session context. So part of what I'm doing right now, which feature I'm building and so on. And actually the third layer of context, it's the one that you always have to discard, so that because the context window, as we said, is finite. The third layer we always discard, and when we start working on something else, we start a new session with empty third layer of context. And as I already mentioned, brainstorm with AI, lock boundaries in place and milestones, things that you already reviewed and you're satisfied with, and those things shouldn't be changed, reducing the solution space. And then build step by step. So essentially, when you're prototyping and experimenting, go ahead and do the full vibe coding thing, generate the thing in one shot. But when you're building a project that you long-term you want to support, it's really good to go step by step, and verify and validate each step. Request a minimalistic solution. So essentially, if you don't say, I want something minimal, and I have this in my steering configured, you're gonna usually get some additional things. It's going to be over-engineered. It's going to be a bit too much, let's say like that. I mean, agents have the tendency to over-delivering. And then a really good point is review what the output is, and if you're satisfied, or build further to build or restrict or write another prompt, or rewrite your prompt and execute again. Yeah, so another thing that we wanted to share is, let's see if Cloud code is done. Okay.
And Vlad, we have to look a bit at the time. We did announce it can take up to 1 hour, 15 minutes, the class. But still, since we started.
Yeah, yeah, okay, now it's downloaded. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So there is a bit of, so I downloaded, there is a bit of issue with the styling, but as you can see, with 1 or 2 prompts, we're going to get there and it's going to be working. So we have a CV generator. I'm going to get it up and running probably in the next half an hour or whatever, and tomorrow it's going to be online on the platform. So you can go ahead and play with it yourself. So we generated it today, right now together. The last slide that I wanted to share, and then I give back to you, Tilman, is, as I already mentioned, so try out the tinytoolstack.com. It's completely free and it's always going to be free. It's a really useful platform that helps with small tools. And the other one is this vibesmonitor.com, where that's essentially an operations center for everybody that wants to create tools. So it's quite interesting. We're all going to become builders and creators, and we're going to build projects. But once we are deploying them live and we want to actually have products that we are providing, we need to look and we have to check out how can we operate, like what are the operations of a product, like how do I check that, what's my analytics engagement, do I have a way of people to give me feedback if something doesn't work on a client device, how do I figure that out? And for all of those things, they're essentially tools that I can integrate. But the problem is a lot of those tools either like I need three to four tools, and all of those tools then I have to integrate, and then it's a lot of overhead that I have to put in. That's one, and there's a bit of like more technical approach. How do I get them integrated? And essentially this product, Vibes Monitor that I've created, gives you exactly that. So it looks like this. You copy a single line in your project, and it's actually really clearly described how should you copy it, where should you copy it, and then you get analytics in terms of visitors, you get engagement, like where they're coming and so on, what they're checking, like you get the whole flows. And when you start actually filtering with the time, you can get like really interesting conversion flows, what happened and so on, where people left, and also detailed sessions analysis. You get also errors, like what errors happened on the platform. And you can see then like what's the issue, and this you can then copy and paste in Cloud Code to fix it. And also you get feedback really easily. So people, on your website, this button appears and people can give you feedback with a screenshot. If we open this here with a screenshot, so it's also context aware. And as you probably noticed, you get discount with 20% with using this code. So I think with this, we conclude the live demo.
Thank you so much, Vlad. This was really great. Yeah, I want to wrap up the session briefly. So I'm sharing my screen again for 2 minutes. Sharing the whole screen here. So one thing I wanted to show you, well, first of all, the pet app is now also live, but it's not functional yet. This is just a mock-up. But one thing that Vlad was saying, which I really want to highlight, the debugging is extremely important. So let's assume here I would have some error logs. I would just copy them over and give them to my coding assistant, to whichever coding assistant. I can just give the error logs. Other sources for error logs would be, for example, wherever I have it deployed. For example, I could have it deployed on Amplify, on Vercel, and it would also give me some error logs. And these really help the coding assistant for building. And the coding assistant can also debug itself. So that's the advantage if, for example, you are connected with AWS, it's connected with AWS CLI. So it can build a container locally, it can call the AWS API, and it will get some response, and maybe the response is not the expected ones, but then it knows what to do to fix it. Or it can read the logs of an agent, and then it can auto fix the agent. It can do all of those things the more you integrate your agent. Yes, and then finally, so some of you may want to build application. Some of you may want to build with AI. And also want to build more with AI. A good friend of mine, his name is Puria. He recently launched his new Udemy course, and he will launch more Udemy courses in the future. So this is about mastering generative AI from neural networks to multi-agent. I'm subscribed myself. I didn't make it to do the course yet, but I encourage you to check it out. So Puria is also a great person, and I think the 13 euro are very affordable. So if you want to go deeper into building, because one thing is to do a lot with vibe coding and spec engineering, but what helps me personally is have a good understanding of the things, so I can give some very targeted hints to the AI to then ultimately solve it. So now finally going back one more time to the presentation mode. Yeah, but this is just to say, then thank you all for attending. Just to do a small summary. So feel free to check out vibemonitor.com for your application. I'm using it myself now. Feel free to check out this course from Puria about building agents. I say, go build. This is what I sometimes tell my coding assistant as well. So sometimes now I have to stop myself from building because I need my rest and my sleep, but it sometimes really gets addictive. So thank you so much for staying here. And we would be really grateful about your feedback. If there's anything that you were missing, we would also be very glad to hear your feedback about that. Follow us on LinkedIn if you like. So thanks a lot. Have a beautiful evening. Happy building.